I'm Scott Alamo. It's the 25th of September, 2023. This is my vlog of daily life living in Leon, Nicaragua. So today I want to give a little bit of an apology. I got behind quite a bit on, and I mentioned this before, I've been lost on a lot of emails, and I moved email systems because I could not find the emails that were coming in for people, from people that had been responded to or hadn't been. It was set up, I don't know, it just didn't work at all for what I needed, and I could not figure out what I was missing or what needed to be done. So I switched email systems. Things have been working pretty well since then. It still takes me a few days to get back to people, but I am seeing who I've responded to, who I've not, and I'm able to keep track of what's going on. So my apologies to, I don't know how many people I missed. I'm hoping one or two, or none, obviously, but possibly one or two. I've taken steps and I'm doing my best to respond. But if you have been missed, please have some patience, but email me again and say I was missed. You know, now I'm in the new email system. I can respond and I will be able to track you. So take a moment and do that. But we're going to cover a couple of topics today in regards to that. One is the problems that you have searching for houses here in Nicaragua, and the other is what it's like for animals here, because a lot of people wonder what animal life is like here in Nicaragua. So we're going to cover that. We're going to get to all of that right after the bump. All right, our first topic for the day is why it's so hard to see houses here and to film them and show them and so forth. So about 6 months ago, we started offering and talking about how we would go and you could pay us to go out and look at houses and you film them and take photos and then, you know, you guys could see them remotely, kind of a house showing system. Well, this poses a bit of a problem, it turns out, in Nicaragua. And so we're just not going to offer that service in that way anymore. We're still doing house hunting services where we go look at things and let you know about them and help you find something. But to actually go out and look at a specific house turns out to be all but impossible. And here's what we found. Some of this we knew, but we didn't know about the percentages. We knew it could happen. We didn't know it would happen continuously. The thing that happens is a house says, you know, for rent, for sale, whatever, you contact the number that's on it and you find out that in many cases, they won't answer the phone at all. It's been disconnected. A lot of times those numbers have been there for years. That's one problem. But when you do talk to someone, quite often they're simply unwilling to show the house. If they are willing to show the house, quite often they're not willing to let you take photographs or video it, and they don't want you to come and see it unless you have an active buyer or renter physically with you. They don't want any information being passed on, and in some cases they simply don't want to do it with gringos or anything that would contribute to a gringo possibly buying or renting a house. That this could happen, of course, that goes more or less without saying, but that it happens constantly and is the majority case is absolutely surprising. And so the question comes up, why does this happen? And so let's talk about that for a little bit, because to some degree we're hypothesizing, but there's a lot of factors we know are going on. The first one is easy. Many of these properties have been for sale for many years. The signs go up, no one takes them down, and whoever was dealing with it long ago is no longer connected with the numbers or contact information that were associated with the house. Because nothing turns over here, people really have given up on trying to actively sell. They think putting up the sign was going to do some good at the time, and eventually it's just not worth taking it down because no one's calling anyway, they think. So that's one thing, and we see a lot of that, right? A lot of these for sale signs are visibly ancient. But let's assume we actually get a hold of someone. What happens then? Why are so many people trying to not let us see the houses? And in some cases, it's depending on who we manage to contact. One person will be thrilled to show us a house and another person will forbid us from seeing that house. And it just depends who we talk to. So we can potentially see a house if we find another contact for it. In these cases, there's a lot of things going on. One, there are some where we're pretty sure that the houses are not really for sale. They're putting up for sale or for rent signs to placate someone in their family. It's very common that houses here are owned by multiple people. That is almost the norm. So what happens is you may have a couple who owns a house, they pass it on to their children, they have 3 children, and then 60 years later, there are 3 people, none of whom who live in the house, or one of whom who does and 2 who do not, and they live different places, and they all have different opinions on what should happen with the house. One person wants to sell it, one person wants to rent it, one person wants to use it, for example. Or one wants to sell it and one wants to keep it just because it's nostalgic, they already own it. you can imagine how these things would go. The same things happen in the US, but you very rarely have multiple people owning a property like that. Just culturally different. So with this, it's very difficult in many cases to have people agree on a house. So in some cases, someone may put up a for sale sign to placate someone who says they want to sell it, knowing it's very hard to do so, and they put their own number for contact, and on the off chance that someone actually tries to contact them, they simply dissuade that person from actually seeing the house. We saw this with one in Puente Arlencillo that many of you asked us to go see. There was a for sale sign. I've toured the house personally, but did not film it 2 years ago, and when we went to look at it, they simply, they gave us a time, told us to go, and then didn't show up. And then when we were standing there at the gate for 30 minutes, we kept calling them on the phone. They're like giving us excuses, and eventually like, no, we don't want to show you the house. And that was it. They did not want to show it to us because of what we looked like or something we did. We showed up, there was no communications, it was just they had changed their minds or had been hoping we weren't going to show up or hoping we would just go away and give up when we got there or whatever. But they actually, eventually, we were so persistent, they eventually like, we are simply not willing to show the house. It is not available. Is the sign for sale still up? Absolutely. We see it all the time. Obviously, it's not going to go away. It was available 2 years ago. It has remained for 2 years. Now we know that people probably did look at it, made some offers. They had to turn them down. Now they're not willing to show it at all. That seems to be the pattern. So that's something that's going on. Is that what's happening at that one? I don't know, but that was a place where they actively, as far as we know, actually spoke to one of the owners, and they would not discuss further with the property. We have the same ones with ones we've tried to buy ourselves. We've tried to buy in Las Penitas. We find some of the owners of a property, they're very interested in selling. They really like us. They're like, oh, we want to work with you. We've had other people try to buy and we didn't really like working with them. We'd love to work with you. Let's put something together and see if we can sell this house. And their siblings never agreed to let the conversation move forward. And so we got stuck where we found some people, they're like, yes, please buy this property. And other ones are like, this is our family property. We don't ever want it to leave. They're all in their 80s and 90s. So at some point it's going to pass on to another generation, and the same cycle is going to start over again with even most likely more dilution of the ownership. And once you start getting 5, 6, 7 people owning a property, getting all of them agree to agree to do anything with it, when the ones who simply want to hold it in the family, all they have to do is veto selling it, and it becomes a de facto decrepit property that can never change hands. It's a very difficult situation, and it's one that I wish that they came up with some mechanism to address, because it affects so many properties. You go down the beach especially, and there are empty properties all over the place. And almost all of them, because if there is an empty property on a beach, people are trying to find the owner and trying to make something work. Whether they're disputed, they're owned by multiple people, or whatever, they end up in this situation where no one can agree on taking an action, and so the only action that can take is inaction. So whatever state it's in, that's what they have to do. And so that the default is to hold it in perpetuity, unable to use, is bad. There could be a way, and sorry, there's actually quite a lot of smoke rolling in as I'm doing this. The sky is full of smoke. Ash is falling on me. Someone is burning like just over our wall, and it's coming up. It's a little bit crazy. What they need to do is do something where like the default action, if people cannot agree to a property, is to go after a market price and sell it. It's the only thing that actually makes sense, to consolidate everything, make sure everyone gets their value out of it, and then move it on to someone who can actually develop it. Because there are so many properties going undeveloped in the country, it's really a tragedy that there's many people who want to develop, who want to invest, and simply don't have access to properties to do so because of this problem. Now, of course, there's lots of available properties too, but there are many prime locations that are empty just for this reason, and it's on every beach everywhere you go, and all through the cities as well. Like, it's all over the country, but the more prime locations have it much worse. If you go out into the country, you're looking at a farmhouse, chances are someone's not going to be like, let's hold on to it, it's got so much value. No, they're just like, get rid of it, right? I don't want to deal with it, I want some money. But when it gets on the beach, they're like, but this is where I went as a child, this is where my parents went, my parents will be upset if I get rid of it. Like, you just end up with this feeling that you have to hold on to a property that you can't use, and legally they're barred from building on it or anything because of the joint ownership. The one who wants to sell will never agree to build. The one who wants to keep will never agree to sell, and you just end up in a deadlock, and that's the way things go. And because of the mentality that is very common here, that holding on to property is fine as long as you're not continuing to invest in it, and that getting the money for it just isn't that important, people don't see the properties as this investment that's going bad. They just feel like it's money they've never had and they don't think about it. And so while as North Americans, we would instantly be like, but I could have this money and turn it into these other things. It's not really seen that way. And so there isn't that incentive, that natural incentive that we would have in North America to get everyone together and get a property sold. And those who are interested in selling often are not that incentivized. They're like, I'd like to sell it, but I'm not going to put in an effort to get my siblings that I don't want to talk to anyway to agree on this. That's not worth it. If they all just agreed, yes, I'd be on board, but I'm not going to I'm not going to create the momentum to get everyone together to get rid of it. So that's one thing that's happening. Another is that here real estate agents aren't like you think they are. They're kind of just people who show houses. And that means that there's a big incentive to not let anyone else see a house. So I have a real estate agent that I work with up in Fatima, and he can't believe that we would pass deals on to him that when we find buyers, we're not the agents. We're not trying to get a commission. We're just like, no, we want to show houses, and whoever's doing whatever, do your thing. And he's like, you would actually show houses and let me get my commission as the agent? We're like, yeah. And he's like, that's amazing. People don't do that. Everyone snipes the houses out from each other, under each other here. So if you can get pictures or video of a house, you can go show it to someone and potentially sell a house and get a commission. And the people who are actively trying to sell it and may or may not be contracted to sell it won't get a piece of the pie. And that's an important thing here, is that there is traditionally, there's new laws coming into place. I don't know when they're going to take effect, but there's no official contracts for real estate sales here. So if someone is the official representative of a property, the seller's agent, that may or may not be a very strong contract. And in most cases, if you manage to find the owner, you can cut the agent out of the deal. And that's important because in many cases, the agents aren't doing anything. They slap their name on there, maybe, and that is it. They're not taking pictures. They're not putting it up on a website. They're not going out and finding buyers. They're not telling anyone about the property. So why should they get a percentage? That makes sense. But there's this confrontational, this adversarial system that is basically built in at this point, where the owners don't trust the sellers to do anything and the sellers don't trust the owners not to cut them out of the deal. And so neither works towards any type of mutually beneficial agreement. They just kind of work against each other in many cases. So you end up, and then buyer's agents don't represent the buyers. They are just people who are out to, they actually represent the sellers possibly more than the seller's agents do, because they're only paid by bracketing up the price and getting a house moved. So they have some incentive to move a place in theory, but they are only incentivized to move the most expensive ones, not the ones that go the fastest or make the most sense, and for the buyers. And so they can be in the same boat where they're not interested in really going through any effort to show a house, because they'll just show a different house, right? And so you end up in this system where there's nobody who really benefits from showing and dealing with a house except for the owners. And the owners often have these layers of people who for years have said that they will deal with stuff, and they feel that those people owe them this work, and those people are like, yeah, but we don't trust it, we'll get paid. And so you end up in this situation where no one's willing to do anything. And it's very common for the owners of property, this is obviously not a guarantee, but it is extremely likely that the owners of properties are going to be quite old, and they have no idea about putting things online. They don't know how to take the pictures, they don't know how to take the videos. Even camera phones are often things they're not used to, and so having any contact or information, most of them just wash their hands of these properties. They want nothing to do with them. They don't feel that they're ever going to realize the gains from the house, and they're perfectly happy to just own the house and live with it that way in quite a few cases. And so there's this, the only people who truly benefit are the ones in the worst position to take action to move the house. And so there's a lot of just everyone's out to keep assets off the market until a buyer is completely locked in. And so many owners don't want anything to do with people trying to buy the house. They feel they'll be taken advantage of, so they want a seller's agent to deal with it. The seller's agent doesn't want you to find the owner, because if you work out a deal, you can then call the owner and be like, look, I'll take this percentage off the top if I work with you directly, and they get cut out. Like, just everyone is out for themselves and there's no protection. That's where the contract system for real estate in North America does have an advantage, and that's why they're changing it here. But it also creates a lot of good things here, that if you can talk to the owner, if you don't have an agent, you just have a lawyer, the cost of moving property is dramatically lower than in North America. You have like 6% simply lower cost right from the start, and everyone's more aligned. So as long as you have no agents involved at all, you have an advantage. But if you need to get out and advertise something, there's no one to do that. And so then you have a problem. So they have part of the system working well, but they haven't addressed other issues of it. So it's a partial fix, or a partial improvement, or however you want to look at it. The United States and Canada have taken a very different tact, and then have put a lot of time into it to make it basically work pretty well. But it does cause movement of real estate in the United States to have a very big overhead and a potential loss, and so it keeps things from moving. It makes it dangerous for people to buy and sell. They want to rent in many cases because there's so much danger to if you simply bought and sold houses all day long, you would just have 6% coming off the top all the time, and that's very costly on such a big purchase. Here you can get around that, but then you have all this problem of how do you find and coordinate the buying and selling of houses. So those things really contribute a lot to these properties being very difficult for us to show. So we've had a number that we've wanted to show that people have requested specifically, and they're requesting them because we showed the outside of the house, and here's the for sale or here's the for rent sign, and we're like, how can we buy or rent or whatever? How can we get this word out to people? We want to look at it, and they're just like, no, right? Not going to let you see it. And so it's a cultural thing that's making that happen on one side. We're no longer going to offer that as a service because there's just no way that we're going to be able to keep you guys happy, and that's really my fault for having offered that as a way to potentially see houses. Like, it sounds great, like it was a very cheap service, and we like it because we go out, it gives us a way and kind of helps us cover some of the cost of going out, because it cost us more than that, right, to go to the house, right? So the people who have sent us out, you don't realize we're putting in days of work trying to get into these houses. In some cases, I've spent an hour standing at the house not able to film it, right, just standing there while another member of my crew is trying to coordinate getting someone to let me into the house, right? So we've lost lots of time in individual little things trying to make this happen. So from our perspective, it's a total loss. Like, it's just losing money like crazy. And for you guys, it's very frustrating because you're like, I want to see this house. I'm all excited to see this house. And then we spend months trying to get them to let us in, and then it just falls by the wayside because it's like, well, we keep every so often going back, trying to see if we can contact someone else, and it just becomes a really long process that's very unfruitful. And so that's just not a good way to go. For people who want us to help them find property, like, yes, love to help. We'll talk about that. But for going to see a specific house, be aware that that's just almost, it's not almost guaranteed. It is way too likely that any given specific house will be unavailable for us to see, regardless of their stated status for buying or selling. And it's also possible that if you were standing here and were an active buyer, cash in hand, and went to that house and said, look, I have the cash in hand, I'm here, I'm ready, they might come show you the house. So we just don't know. But whatever they're detecting about us, and they certainly don't know the show, right? It's not like that. But something about me being a gringo, or having multiple people, or the time that we want to do it, or the neighborhoods that we're in, or whatever, is causing a situation where so many people just refuse to show us houses. And we had sellers agents that we were helping get deals, and they just flat out, their company said, you're not allowed to show anything where they're filming and showing other people, no matter how much it would help move properties for them. Not allowed to do it. And it became very adversarial. It's very strange, because at the beginning they're like, this is great, thank you for promoting us, getting our name out there. And then as soon as we started doing it, their owners were like, nope, we don't do promotion, that is not a thing. And it's just this weird reaction. But things that we're so used to in business in North America, that this is just obviously anything that gets promotion is good, more news, getting the word out there. But in this adversarial market where they don't have a lock on those houses, and if one group shows us the house and we put it, and this is legit, right? We showed a house in St. Augustine, and the real estate agents, this is the last time we worked with those agents, they took us there. They're all, glad to see us. We've been friends for years. We've gotten many properties for them. We ourselves have taken properties from them. We've helped other people's work with properties through them. So they know that we make them deals, right? And we don't get paid anything, right? We're just assisting, especially if we're the ones that are buying. But they know that if we put the video online, someone can see the video, determine which house it is, find another agent or find the owner directly and cut them out. And so they don't actually know that they're going to be the recipients of the deal. And so I can only imagine that's why, even though on average they probably make way more money from that, they're unwilling to take that chance, which I think is also foolish. I think it's many layers of foolishness, but it comes from real concerns, and it's a difficult market. So we love looking at houses. I try to do it whenever we can, but doing ones that are specific for you guys, I apologize, that was not a good idea, and it's just not a reasonable way to be able to work in this market. A number of people have asked about animal care and animal treatment here in Nicaragua, and this is unfortunately a pretty sad topic, and so that's why we often don't spend a lot of time dwelling on it. But so some realities that people need to be aware, and these are things that you need to, and we've talked about it some, but we don't talk about it a lot. Some of the things you need to be aware of if you're coming to Nicaragua is that there are a tremendous number of stray animals: dogs, cats, horses, cows. You're going to find animals wandering everywhere, and in some cases, especially dogs and cats, those may be semi-wild, semi-feral animals with no particular home of their own. In some cases they do have a home, but people keep them outside and they wander for huge areas, sometimes in packs. And when it comes to horses or cows, generally they do have an owner, but they're just kind of put out to wander and fend for themselves in between being needed, and they only get rounded up when it's time to do something specific with them. Now, over time, a lot of the situation is improving. There is a culture of animals as pets that is starting to take root here in Nicaragua, and that's great to see happening. Traditionally, dogs and cats were very much seen as simply appliance animals. They were kept to maybe protect the house or to keep rats away and nothing more, and so they were treated very badly and kept at arm's length. People didn't see them as particularly pets. That really is changing pretty quickly, and I think part of that is seeing the culture from other regions is more visible on television and in movies, things like that. People are talking about it more, and as it starts to take hold, it takes hold much more quickly, right? You start to know people who have pet animals and treat them like family, and much more like a North American relationship with dogs and cats and so forth. And so we're seeing positive change. We're seeing people really take an interest in the welfare of their animals. People are putting in effort to have pets that live in their homes. People are walking animals on leashes. And I've noticed just in the years that we've been here, a change in that direction. The number of people who had animals on leashes versus not on leashes is visibly changing. So that's a positive, but it doesn't change the fact that the number of loose and wild animals is extremely high. When you're driving down the road, having to dodge animals running across the road is a constant concern. Now, that said, everything happens much more slowly here. Traffic moves more slowly. The animals have been hundreds of generations of dodging cars, and so the actual number of accidents that you see is extremely low, but you fear for it non-stop. Every time you're in a car, you see animals jumping out of the way of the car, and they almost always make it. But living in North America, you can go a decade and not have to worry about having a dog nearly in front of your car, and here it's almost a daily thing, and so you have to worry about that. It's something that you're always thinking about. Now, you can make a huge difference, right? We have dogs and we keep them in an enclosed yard. We take very good care of them. They have a great life here. You don't have to worry about the quality of life for your animals because you can treat them as well as you want. Of course, that should go without saying, but that's sometimes a concern. And the better you treat your animals here, the more that you make that a thing, the more you can have a positive impact on the world around you. So if your concern is making a difference, coming here and showing good treatment of animals can make a difference. And of course, by being here, you're encouraging good veterinary care, which we'll talk about in a second, and that helps a lot as well. A lot of people, when they see the treatment of animals here, choose to avoid coming to the region because they find it heartbreaking, and that's real, right? As someone who is a vegetarian and an animal lover, this is something that is very hard for me. The thing that makes me able to handle it is I know that by being here, I'm creating a positive impact, right? I'm helping build a veterinary industry by using multiple vets and supporting that industry. We are demonstrating to people how animals can be cared for. We have dogs, we have a cat. Our cat is rescued from here, our dogs are brought here. We have helped other people rescue animals. We've helped other people with the care of animals who have been injured or whatever, and so we've made a difference. We also have a parrot here that we've rescued, right? His owner actually just passed away at the time that I'm making this video, but knowing that that was likely going to happen, and he's a 27-year-old parrot, needed somewhere to go where he could really be cared for. He was brought here, and he's now living his best life in a pretty much luxurious setting with all kinds of great food and people around all the time to keep him entertained and so forth. forth. But that's something that we're doing, and people see that happen, and that makes them think, oh, I could treat my dogs differently and have a very different experience with them. They can be our friends, they can be a part of our family, and more and more we know people who grew up here, right, who have animals that are just part of they're obsessed in the same way that North Americans are, right? Their Instagram feeds are just pictures of their dogs sleeping at their feet while they work from home. And things like working from home are changing that, right? People have that same, I'm home all the time, I spend time with my animals become more domesticated, whereas traditionally there was so many people would go out of the home to work, or they needed animals for protection, that they had a different relationship with them. So we're seeing that change. Horses, some people mentioned, we go to the Ipikos and the horses tend to get treated a little bit rough during the Ipikos. That's true. That is a performance thing. For the most part, those animals are treated pretty well most of the time. They have to be able to do those shows. They're very healthy. So those horses actually have it pretty good. Work horses, which you do see a lot of, often not treated the best, and that is again very heartbreaking. Cows here actually get treated quite well. They're pretty much free range. Chickens, same thing. They're just wandering about, right? So it's different things have different treatments, but overall it can be very rough. So that is something to consider, how that's going to affect you. But I do encourage you to think of it in terms of how can you make a positive difference. You may find that you truly can make a positive difference. And if you don't have animals now, or you're not bringing animals with you, certainly consider coming down and adopting 1 or 2 or 100 animals here. And every one that you take off the street, every one that you spay or neuter, you're going to make a big positive impact on not just their lives, but the overall ecosystem. Every dog that's not out on the street fending for food, every cat that's not stray running from house to house, that makes a big difference. And everyone that is not having another litter that needs to be taken care of helps as well. So there are very, very effective ways that you can be a positive influence just by being here, right? And if you then want to take on a greater role and sponsor a spay and neuter program, for example, you could make massive differences very easily. Now, veterinary care. Here, the veterinary market is actually pretty decent. Nicaragua is the training center for all the surrounding countries. Costa Rica tends to get a lot of students from here. Honduras gets nearly all from here. So this is a place that trains veterinarians, and there is a very good accessibility of veterinary care in most of the markets. Some things that North Americans are looking for that locals do not, such as crematorium facilities. Those are very expensive, very hard to get to, right? You'd be going to Managua. There's only one in the country. It's very expensive. Very few people use it. It's just not how people treat dead animals here, right? But really how you treat an animal once they've passed on is not very important, because you're not affecting the lives of any animal anywhere. Focusing on the living animals is far more important. That people do not have some strong connection to the remains of their animals is really not a problem. If that's something that you need, those facilities, they exist, but they are quite expensive. They're not plentiful. But for healthy animal care, right, here in Leon, for example, we know several good veterinary services. Our vet here is fantastic, absolutely loves animals. Our little dog is completely unable to sleep on his own. If he does need to stay over at the vet's, he sleeps in the bed with him, right? And the vets make house calls. They come here to see our dogs. They come here to see the cat. They come here to see the bird. We take the animals there sometimes too, as well. We have a really good relationship, but there are many vets like this, right? There's many really excellent services, people who put in a lot of care and love the animals. That's not a problem. There are many terrible vets here. I can also tell you that in the United States that is true as well. The training programs in the United States create more of an oversight in many cases. So if you have a vet who is really bad, they're more likely to be shut down, more or less. But there isn't actually that much structure in the US for that. You can be a pretty incompetent vet, and as long as you have paid your dues and gone through university, they tend to look the other way. They have to, because if they didn't, it would undermine the credibility of the university and training systems that they push so hard to try to promote. And so the US actually has quite a few problems with this as well. And in the US, you also have this much bigger problem that the majority of veterinary care is now corporate, that big companies with no concern for animal welfare are purchasing the clinics at outrageously high prices. This is an area I've worked in, so I'm pretty familiar with this. and then the doctors are left unable to make medical calls for animals. And in some cases, you'll have a doctor who's like, I could save this animal's life, and they're like, nope, it's after hours, we're not going to get enough money for it, you have to let the animal go. You don't have the decision-making power as the doctor to decide what to do. And the owners, even though they're willing to pay, it's just not worth it for the clinic to open up for whatever reason or whatever situation. So animals are being left to die in the United States, even though the facilities and the people and everything's there to do it. A corporate decision maker with no connection to anybody in the chain can just make the judgment call to let them go, much like American healthcare, that a hospital can make the judgment call, or an insurance company can make the judgment call to pull the plug on someone when there's otherwise the doctors are like, no, we could do something. And like, yeah, but that person's life isn't worth that much money to us. We're an insurance company. We don't like them. They're customers, right? So you get a similar thing in veterinary in the United States. Here, you can have veterinarians who are just super cheap or just trying to skim by, and learning to avoid those is critical, but it's pretty easy to do. Finding a good vet is not a problem, and getting really good veterinary care. Honestly, we can get better veterinary care here than we can in the United States. Just the amount of effort that people can put in, that they're willing to put in, and of course, the amount of veterinary care that you can afford for your animals is completely different, right? Now, we have had issues where, like, we needed to get x-rays for an animal who had been injured, and there was no x-ray machine available at that specific time. There's an x-ray machine in town, but it was not available for a couple days, and there was very little we could do because there weren't many resources to work around that. Limitations like that do exist, and that sounds extreme, right? In the US, you'd be like, there's x-rays everywhere. And here it's like you would have to go hours away, transport an injured animal. And in that case, they were able to do the surgery and everything. They just couldn't verify as much stuff as they wanted to. And he ended up just fine, right? But some facilities like that can be more limited, but the more that you use veterinary care here, the more you bring animals in and the more that those things are going to become available. So by avoiding that, you make that harder to get, but by coming and taking advantage of that, you can help make that possible. So consider that that's another way that you could be a very positive impact to the market. Same as finding good vets and helping them stay in business, helping them be profitable makes a big difference. In many cases, they're not really that profitable. They're doing it because it's what they love, not because it's what makes them money. So having a little bit more revenue really can help quite a bit, whereas in the United States, most people are in veterinary care. Maybe they love the animals, but they have a lot of money to be made, and that remains a huge incentive. Very few people go into veterinary care without regards for the money. Certainly some do, right? I've met doctors who are operating way too low in cost, and basically working for free when they don't need to, but it's the exception, not the rule. Here it is quite the opposite. It is the rule, not the exception. So those are our topics. Yes, the animal thing is heartbreaking, but it is improving, and you can make a positive difference. Housing is frustrating and weird, but it is what it is, and we're going to do our best to find ways to learn more about housing. And as always, if you've got an email that I haven't responded to, I know that there's no one in my list that I'm aware of that I've not responded to, so email me again. It now goes to the new email system, and I will see it, no problem. It does take me days to respond. Give me time. Don't expect give me at least a week on any response, because I do get very busy with work and cannot necessarily get to things to get back to you, but send me an email and I'll make sure that we do respond. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for your patience. And as always, like, subscribe, post on social media. If you like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Allen Miller. If you're looking for assistance, email at info@relocatenicaragua.com. That is the one that goes to the new email address that we moved. So that's how you reach me. Share with your friends, tell your family, and I will see all of you tomorrow.